My name is David, and I'm part of the team here at MyWorks. I want to welcome you to MyWorks, and I'm looking forward to walking through how to easily set up our sync between Shopify and QuickBooks Online in this video. The setup process is quite simple, and by the end, your Shopify store will be connected to QuickBooks and automatically syncing new data like customers, orders, products, inventory, and more. You'll also be able to sync existing data like products and orders if you wish as well. As a reminder, everything we review together here is already available in our Help Center. You can review our help articles for the same step-by-step instructions we'll cover in this video to get your sync all set up, as well as best practices and additional guides on other features of our sync. In our Help Center, you can also reach out to our support team, who is available 24/7 to help with absolutely any question you have. We also can include a complimentary setup call and screen share with our paid plans. So you're welcome to schedule that within your account with us if you'd like extra help with setup, or you just have questions after you finish setup on your own. That call is totally optional though, and is not required because it's easy to set up our sync on your own, like we'll cover here today. We'll get started by doing a quick review of the basic requirements you'll want to have before setting up our sync. These are simply to have a Shopify store, whether you're currently in the process of building one or already have a live store, and access to your QuickBooks Online company to be able to connect our app. Now we'll get started with the first part of setup, which is quite easy. Simply installing our app from your Shopify App Store. Once you found it here, go ahead and hit install. You'll be directed to your store to confirm installing. And the first area you'll see is choosing a plan. You can start with our free launch plan or choose a different plan based on how many orders per month you plan to sync. We'll start with our launch plan for now. Now that it's installed, the first step is to connect to your QuickBooks company. Simply click this green button to connect to your QuickBooks company, where you'll be asked to log into QuickBooks and choose, if you have multiple companies, choose the company you'd like to connect our app to. Once it's connected, your connection page will show this, and that you're connected successfully to your QuickBooks company. Now that you're connected, there's just a few steps left to tell our sync what you'd like us to sync and control how we sync that data with QuickBooks. We'll cover these in the Settings and Map menus here on the left under MyWorks. Let's kick it off with our mappings. To clarify, mapping is just linking your existing Shopify data to your existing QuickBooks data. It's usually a one-time process you'll do during setup, for example, mapping your existing products together. And it would only apply to data that exists already in Shopify and QuickBooks. So for example, if you have products only in Shopify or only in QuickBooks, there's no need to map them together here. Instead, you'd be able to push them, for example, from Shopify to QuickBooks in this push menu here on the left. Let's get started with the product mappings. And the reason we'll start here is because our customer mappings are usually quite optional. Whenever we're syncing an order into QuickBooks, we'll check QuickBooks for an existing customer at that time. So you only need to map your customers together if they are in QuickBooks, but they don't have the same name or email as they would have in Shopify. A common scenario for this would be, for example, if you have multiple customers in Shopify that order for the same QuickBooks company. Say, for example, they order for Kathy's Consulting Company. You could match the multiple customers in Shopify, if you like, to the same customer in QuickBooks, even if their name or email doesn't match in QuickBooks. But if they're already in QuickBooks, or if they don't exist in QuickBooks, there's simply no need to map them here. We'll automatically create them in QuickBooks as needed when we're syncing their first order, or we'll find them in QuickBooks if they already exist with a matching name or email as we're syncing their next order. So, moving on to product mappings. Here you'll see a list of all of your Shopify products on the left and a drop down of all of your QuickBooks products here on the right. And this is quite easy and flexible to map together, as you have a few different options. For example, you can choose the matching QuickBooks product here manually. For example, if we want to match the snowboard to maybe the water bottle product here in QuickBooks, you can easily match that yourself manually here and simply scroll down to the bottom to save when you're done. But of course, manually matching it isn't the only way to do it. For example, if your SKUs in Shopify or your names in Shopify match the name or SKU of your product in QuickBooks, our handy AutoMap tool here on the top right will help you automatically match those together without having to click through any of these products one by one. And to do that, you simply click this AutoMap button here on the top right, choose which two fields match each other. For example, if your Shopify SKUs match your QuickBooks SKUs, you'd make it look like this. Choose whether you'd like to apply it to unmapped products only or all products. This can be helpful if you already have some products mapped, maybe manually, but you'd like to rerun an auto map of some other products that are maybe not yet mapped. So you can run this tool as many times as you'd like. And then you'd simply click auto map to finish mapping those products together. And if there are any products where the SKU, for example, matches or the name matches the product in QuickBooks, those would be automatically selected for you here on the right, and there's nothing else you'd have to do. As a reminder, the reason why it's helpful to map your products is really twofold. Firstly, when we're syncing orders from Shopify into QuickBooks, mapping your products here help us correctly set the right product in QuickBooks as we create that order there for you. That way the order in QuickBooks shows the correct product, and inventory and product reports in QuickBooks can be quite helpful because you'll have the correct product shown in each of those orders. Secondly, it helps us when we're syncing inventory. If inventory changes in Shopify or QuickBooks due to a manual or other change, we'll know what product in QuickBooks to sync that inventory to, or in Shopify to sync that inventory to, if it's mapped here. So those are great reasons why it's usually helpful to map those products together. As a note, it's not required to map your products. So for example, if you don't need all of your products that are in Shopify to also be in QuickBooks, you can certainly leave those unmapped here. If a product is not mapped, but it's ordered in Shopify and we're syncing an order for it into QuickBooks, we have a default product that we'll cover here in our settings in a moment. And that default product is what we'd use for the line item in the order in QuickBooks if that product isn't mapped. So just to review, it's not a requirement. We will have a default product if you decide not to map some or all of your products together, but this is really up to you and can be helpful if you have your products already in QuickBooks to tell us which products in Shopify match which products in QuickBooks. Moving on to the variation tab, very similar. This is simply a list of any variations you might have in Shopify. So if you don't use variations in Shopify, no worries if this page will be blank. But this lets you very similarly match those to separate individual products in QuickBooks as well. And similarly, if they have a SKU in Shopify, you'll be able to use that, or name that matches in QuickBooks. You'll be able to use that AutoMap tool to automatically match them together. Here you can see, for example, we have different versions of ski wax, and we can match those to either the same or different items in QuickBooks. Perfect. Moving on from your product and variation mappings, let's move on to your payment method mappings. This is helpful to let our sync know as we're syncing orders into QuickBooks that based on how the order was paid in Shopify, for example, maybe it was paid by Shopify Payments or by PayPal, based on how that order was paid in Shopify, telling us how you'd like us to sync it to QuickBooks. And there's a few different things you can control here. Firstly, we'll turn on payment syncing for Shopify Payments, for example. Here we can choose what QuickBooks Online payment method we'd like to have set here. And this is just a label in QuickBooks, so there's no right or wrong choice here, but maybe we'll choose card as a descriptive option. More importantly, we can choose what QuickBooks Online bank account that these payments should be syncing into. It's most common for our users to set up a clearing account, for example, in QuickBooks, so that all orders can be synced into that single clearing account for them to be able to easily reconcile and match with later in QuickBooks. For example, we've created one here called Shopify Clearing. You could also select your actual bank account as well, and as a reminder, you can type in this box too. So for example, if we wanted to link it right to our checking account in QuickBooks, that's quite all right too. Another helpful option we have is to be able to sync the transaction fee into the order in QuickBooks. Turning this on will let us sync that transaction fee as a negative line item right in the QuickBooks order. So here we'd enable this option to sync the transaction fee as a negative product or as a negative line item, and we choose that item here in QuickBooks. Normally you'd have a transaction fee item that you've created for this in QuickBooks that's tied to your expense account that you want to track transaction fees in. Once selected, any order we sync to Shopify will also include that transaction fee right in the order as a negative line item to help correctly track transaction fees. Here we can also set if we'd like to give the order in QuickBooks terms. This can be helpful if the order is not paid in Shopify and you'd like to give it terms like net 30, net 60 in QuickBooks. We'll leave that blank for now though. And that's all there is to our mappings. So in review, this lets you map key data in Shopify, like your products or payment methods, to the same or matching data in QuickBooks. This helps you control how we sync this data into QuickBooks and make sure it's coming into QuickBooks exactly as if you would enter it yourself there manually. Now let's move on to our settings. Here in the settings menu, you can additionally control different areas of how we sync data between Shopify and QuickBooks. Starting with our default tab on the top, you remember we talked about that default for unmatched products item in our product mappings a moment ago, and that's what's set here. By default, when MyWorks is connected to your QuickBooks for the first time, we'll create an item in QuickBooks for you called default for unmatched products, and that's what's set here by default. This would never be used if all of your products are mapped together, because we'd follow each product mapping as we're syncing an order into QuickBooks. But this can also be used strategically. If you do not want to map all of your products, you can set a specific item here, because this would be used when we're syncing an order for any product that is not yet mapped to a QuickBooks product. The next three options on this page are quite straightforward as well. You can see they all end in the words for new products. And so these are only used if we're syncing new products from Shopify and creating them in QuickBooks for you. These tell us how you'd like that item to be created in QuickBooks and what income account, inventory asset account, and cost of goods sold account you'd like it to be assigned to. If all of your products are already in QuickBooks and you're not planning on using our sync to add more products to your QuickBooks, you can generally ignore these because they simply wouldn't be used. Let's jump over to our automatic sync tab here on the right for a moment. This is a great visual control panel that lets you control what type of data we're syncing from Shopify to QuickBooks here on the top, and the other direction from QuickBooks to Shopify here on the bottom. By default, when you activate our sync, it's going to look like this. Only the customer and order switches will be on, because by default, we'll only automatically sync new customers and orders from Shopify into QuickBooks. This makes it very easy for you to begin using our sync, because we won't try and automatically sync past data with QuickBooks or the other way around, creating a messy list of customers, orders, or products that you have to then go fix. So by default, we only automatically sync new data for you. If you create new products often in Shopify that you'd like us to automatically sync into QuickBooks, it can be quite helpful to turn this setting on as well. This means that any new product or variation you create in Shopify from this point forward will automatically sync into QuickBooks and create there for you. Here in the lower section, additionally, you can control what we're syncing from QuickBooks Online into Shopify. Inventory can be quite helpful, meaning if there's inventory changes that are made in QuickBooks for any reason, maybe a manual order you created in QuickBooks, a manual inventory adjustment, or just natural bills and inventory that you received in QuickBooks as you restock or reorder inventory. Any changes that are made to inventory levels in QuickBooks, when this setting is turned on, we'd automatically sync that to update Shopify. Same with pricing. If you'd like one place to control your pricing and your pricing in QuickBooks is accurate, this can be very helpful to enable, meaning that any changes you make to your pricing in QuickBooks will be automatically synced over to Shopify, so those Shopify product prices match exactly what you have in QuickBooks. Over here on the right, you'll also notice a drop-down where you can change how often we sync. Depending on the plan you have with us, you can sync as quickly as every 5 minutes or as frequently as every hour. Moving through a few other of these tabs, the order tab here can be helpful to control how we sync orders from Shopify into QuickBooks for you. For example, you'll see on the top that we can sync orders as either a sales receipt or an invoice into QuickBooks. Also helpfully, you can control if we'd like us to set a prefix for orders that we sync into QuickBooks. By default, this will be blank. For example, we've just added SH here as a prefix, meaning if the Shopify order number is 1003, we'd sync that order to QuickBooks as SH-1003. can be quite helpful to just tell those orders apart in QuickBooks and make sure there's no conflicts with other existing order numbers in QuickBooks. Maybe 1003 is an invoice that's already in QuickBooks from a few years ago. We also have the ability to sync order notes to either a line item or the customer message or memo on the statement. This setting controls how and when we sync orders from Shopify into QuickBooks. You'll notice here on the right, we automatically select Authorize and Paid here, meaning that once a Shopify order reaches the status of authorized or paid, that's when it'll automatically be sent into our sync to be sent into QuickBooks. You can very easily control this by adding other statuses or removing statuses here. The only statuses selected here will be when we sync either a Shopify order into QuickBooks for the very first time, or if the Shopify order is updated, syncing an update for that order into QuickBooks. If the order is not in one of these statuses, we would not sync the order or an update for the order into QuickBooks. You can also control what we use for the description line item in an order in QuickBooks, whether that's the name of the Shopify product that was ordered, which is our default, or the description of that product in QuickBooks. You have the ability of a few other settings like syncing all Shopify orders into one customer. This can be very helpful because it's also broken down to recognize your segments that you may have created in Shopify for your customers. A common example that we'll see is having wholesale type of customers, where you want orders from wholesale customers syncing to their own individual customer in QuickBooks. Like John Smith places an order in Shopify, we'd sync that into John Smith is that existing customer in QuickBooks. However, maybe you also sell to retail customers and customers that may not reorder again on your website. Maybe you don't want an individual customer in QuickBooks for each of those orders because they may not order again. That can be helpful to send it to a specific Shopify customer, maybe one you've created called Shopify Sales. That way, all of those orders flow into that one QuickBooks customer. And while the inside of the order, like the billing and shipping address, will still be accurate to match the actual customer that placed the order, it's not creating a brand new customer in QuickBooks for those type of customers. And again, you can control this per segment in your Shopify store, which makes it quite easy to customize. And that's a brief overview of our settings. Once you review your settings and you've finished reviewing your mappings, you are up and running and ready to begin syncing. As a reminder, we'll only automatically sync new data. So based on the settings you've turned on here, any new customers, products, or orders, or inventory changes from this point forward will begin syncing. Now let's take a look at a few other areas of our sync that can be helpful as well. For example, the push menu here on the left. This is helpful if you have customers, orders, products, or variations in Shopify that are not yet in QuickBooks that you'd like to use our sync to create in QuickBooks for you. For example, orders. If you have past orders in Shopify, you'll see those show here, and you can very easily use this page to push those and tell our sync to create those in QuickBooks for you. Same with products and variations. You'll see your full list of Shopify products here, and it's quite easy to push those into QuickBooks by selecting the products you'd like to push and clicking push here at the bottom. The same goes for variations as well. Our log page on the left is also quite helpful, as it can show you recent sync activity, whether it's inventory levels we have updated, orders that we're syncing from Shopify into QuickBooks, or customers and products that we're syncing. If there's ever an error as a customer order or product is syncing, you'll see that error show up in red in our log. That makes it quite easy for you to review and understand what might be causing that to fail to sync. Now that setup is complete and your orders are syncing through, you're all set to go. We recommend you review our Help Center here on the top right to check out our great help docs on setting up and using our sync, as well as extra features that we might not have covered here. And we include 24/7 support via email with all of our plans. You can open a ticket here in our Help Center, or you can email our support team as easily as clicking on this icon here in the bottom right of all of our pages. Our support team is amazing, and there's never a question too small that we won't be happy to help with. Welcome to MyWorks, and happy syncing.